Welcome to a show about gambling.
I should call it Getting It Out with Tom.
This is not really a corporate time. This is not really a mediocre time, which
It's
is
a
our
Tom
podcast.
time. It's a gambling time.
But this is a show that I talked to Daniel about doing just about the stuff that I've learned in gambling the past 3-4 years that I've really been studying.
Can I use a word that I know you're not comfortable with, but I will, and then we'll get started. I feel like this is sort of a passion of yours, and I know you don't like that word.
No, it's
but
fine.
It's there, dude. I see.
It's my biggest hobby.
It is your biggest hobby, and we have a guest on the line. I think that's really cool. You came prepared with notes, a guest, and this should be kind of fun.
Yeah, Jeff is on the line from a Sharp Square podcast and show that he's been posting that show on our BDM gambling page for a while, and I've listened to it, and I know Jeff kind of is in the same mindset as I am is when it comes to gambling.
Jeff, welcome to Getting It Out with Tom Van.
Thank you. I've been a Getting It Out fan for a long time now.
Yeah.
It's
It's huge in the gambling space.
So, real quick, Jeff, what is your relationship with gambling and your show you've been doing? Tell us about your background.
Well, for me, gambling was my bonding with my father. He's still alive, but when I was younger, 8, 9 years old, he took me to the sports bars because he was betting on games.
That's awesome.
I mean, this is the late 80s, smoke-filled, giant satellite dish on this roof of the building. And he taught me about point spreads. And that was, as long as I've been watching football, the point spread has been in play. And just, it's a skill to be able to handicap and to bet games. And it's just always fascinated me. To this day, and it's led to doing a lot of writing about it and doing the podcast, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man.
So a little bit about I started really getting deep diving into gambling and how to become good at it. Probably about 2019.
Yeah, taking it seriously, right? Would you say the pandemic compounded that at all?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because it gave me more time to focus on it. I started buying books. I started listening to audiobooks about it. Really, I became obsessed with figuring out how to get good at it,
or even understanding it. Because I think that's a problem for most people. I'll throw my hat in that realm. You have helped me figure it out, but it's still I think for Johnny Average or most sports fans. It's not easy.
And that's the thing. I wanted to just do this show to kind of share. Me and Jeff can talk about, there's a lot of simple things that people don't know about, where to gamble in Florida, because that makes a huge difference. There's a lot of content out there about gambling. I mean, there is a million podcasts. Sure. You could easily educate yourself, but none of them that I listen to are from Florida and really talk about the limitations we have here in Florida about where we can and where we can't gamble.
Right. Specific to our situation.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. So I figured let's just rock it through this real quick because we'll start from the beginning about where to bet, right? So a lot of people have offshore sports books, and basically just means online sports books that are located in Canada, Costa Rica, outside of the state of or the United States of America.
Where are most at, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm not sure, Jeff. Do you know? I mean, I know a lot of them are based out of Costa Rica.
A lot around Antigua and stuff like that. Any island that you would stash and launder your money. It's a good element for gambling businesses.
Right.
And this is completely legal, by the way. You are completely legally allowed to go on any of these sports books and gamble. And for the most part, a lot of the most popular ones are completely legit. I'll go over some of the ones I use personally: Bovada, MyBookie, Bet Online, XBet. Jeff, do you want to throw any other ones that you particularly use?
Did you leave any?
Yeah, he hits them all.
Bookmaker.eu is a European book that I use, and frankly, even if you don't have an account there, it's a good book to check because it's a really smart book. It's considered one of the sharper ones, so they'll lead the way in moving lines sometimes.
If you're really a layman, what does the term sharp mean? Sorry, I just want to, is that...
I'm sorry. Sharp is more the professionals, the people who are actually really good at this. Yeah, they're putting the effort in, they have all the skill. And then dopes like us, we're the squares.
Gotcha.
We're gamblers,
Yeah.
we're chasing it, we're having a good time.
Perfect.
So a book can also be considered sharper, and the more professional ones, they'll move the lines, and then all the other books will follow their lead. So you might be able to check a line on a super sharp book, see that it's moving, but meanwhile on your more square book or regular book, the line is still the same and you can grab it before it moves. So
and that's the advantage you guys are chasing, right?
Money in all these accounts, you can still use them to sort of see the ebbs and flows of the market.
And Jeff's right. And even let's reverse a little bit and go back to these online sports books. The best way, and I was telling Daniel, I got Daniel into this, the best way to get money in and out, and primarily it's only going in because we'll get to that in a second, but is using Bitcoin. They all now use Bitcoin. You're going to have to get a Coinbase account. It's easy enough. You could YouTube all this stuff. I'm not going to go over that, but get yourself a Coinbase account, get yourself a Bitcoin wallet, YouTube how to transfer money in and out of these sports books. It's very easy. I figured it out.
I did it.
And you know how much of a pop-up I am. I watched YouTube videos, and because this was my hobby and I was into it, I learned how to do it. It's easy enough. They make it user-friendly, but that's the easiest way to get money into all these sports books. And then another sports book that you could use in Florida, which the legality of it is it's kind of hard for me to tell you it's 100% legal. It is for the better is PPH accounts. That they're called PPH, is pay per head.
I want to make a joke so bad.
And it's a guy with a website. A lot of people that you may know have these accounts. It's the stereotypical bookie. They give you a credit.
Right.
Basically they
it would be in very poor form for you to say, "Hey, this is totally legal," because.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. But it's been around for forever, since the beginning of time.
If you look it up, there's no one that's ever been in trouble for betting with these guys. Maybe if the actual bookie gets big enough, they can get in trouble. But betting with a bookie, there's nothing that you have to worry about, in my experience and what I've read. So, but and that goes to another key when it comes to getting into this hobby, which is you need more than one of these books. You need at least 3, maybe more, but because the name of the game, if you want to give yourself the best chance to win, is have multiple sports books, multiple outs. That way you could shop lines. Because I resisted this at first back in 2019 when I started really getting into this. Everybody was every professional that I listened to, all the books.
Well, what were you doing? Were you only staying
I had Bovada.
So you had Bovada, and rather than quote and use the term shopping lines, so what you would do is you would take the line that Bovada gave you and only use that.
And I'd listen to people handicap games and be like, oh, I like this game at this price. And then I'd go on Bovada and it was a full point different or a half point different. Right. And I'd be like, oh, it's just good enough. Like if I was thinking about in the terms of, I think this team's going to win, and not in the terms of looking at the price. Yeah. And it's all about the price. I guarantee you, every professional will tell you, everybody that is good at this will tell you, the price is the only thing that matters. The outcome is impossible to figure out. Yeah. You could handicap and get close, but getting the best price is the only thing that matters in gambling.
Can you explain, when you're using the term price, what that means to layman's?
Jeff, you want to talk about like getting the best price and shopping different books?
Yeah, price can refer to one or two things. It can refer to the number itself. So if you want to play an underdog and they're a field goal underdog, they're going to be +3. What's next to that, it's going to say -110. That's known as the VIG, the juice. You can just look at it like a tax. In gambling, every game you bet and lose, you pay tax on. So if you want to win $100, you have to bet 110. So that's the price. Now, sometimes what the bookies will do is if they're getting a little one-sided on a game, they might not move the number. 3 is a perfect example. It's a key number. They don't want to move off that, and go back and forth. So what they might do is just change the price a little bit. If too many people are playing the +3, they might move the price to -120. So now if you want to win 100, you have to bet 120. And this is to try to encourage some more people on the other side to play the -3 so that they can balance their action a little bit. Ideally, the books would love to have even action on both sides. It's impossible. It never happens. But that is sort of how they play around. And when you hear them playing around with price, it's usually that -110 more so than the number.
So let's just talk about the basics of if someone's listening out there and they were like me 4 years ago, and I just had Bovada, right? When I started getting other books, then it dawned on me that and what the narrative is and what all the professionals are saying is correct. So let's just say you want to start off with 3 books. You get Bovada, you get a Bet Online, right? Both you could use Bitcoin. I think even Bet Online does still do credit card if that's your only choice.
You old timers out there.
Just get Bitcoin, and then say you have a paperhead PPH account with some guy in a website, right? He gives you a credit of, let's say, $2,000 a week, and then you have to settle up with him using a lot of these bookies now use Cash App, they use Venmo, and they use digital money. So, and they usually set up like if you are $250 up or $250 down, that's when they pay off. If you're like $100 or $80, like they don't even bother until you hit a threshold. So then you have 3 books, put them all in one like app on your phone, like
a grouping.
Grouping together. Group them together. This is what I do. And then if you want to bet a game, okay, and this is just your recreational, you're not even handicapping, you're just like, I like the Dolphins +3 against the Chargers coming up week 1 or whatever.
There you go.
So then you go on and you're like, oh, Bovada's got Dolphins +3, right? Then another
is this
book.
your workflow? Do you go to Bovada first?
Usually I go through the listing and just check all the books. Yeah. They make some apps that track this for you, although I've found that a lot of those apps don't have all the books, and they're not going to have your PPH book.
Can I warn you against that too? Look, this isn't even my wheelhouse, but whenever you're using a third-party application to gather information for you, it's slow. And what Tom's talking about is getting it the fastest way the information's there. I would just go to the source.
But it will work if they have your book and it works together. But we're in Florida. We're at a disadvantage because
we're a different animal.
Like up north in a lot of different states, they got DraftKings, they got FanDuel, they got Caesars.
They got it all.
They got every different book that's in the United States, and we have to deal with offshore PPH in Florida until Hard Rock comes back, and that will happen eventually. But just shopping the lines and then getting the best price will give you such a great advantage and help you on your journey to at least break even.
Can I ask you guys a question? So I've shopped. I went to Bovada. I went to my other big book, and then I also went to my independent, guy with a computer, guy with a website. Yeah. And I shopped it, and I found the best line. I found where there's value for me. Do I bet with that particular on that particular app?
Yes. And let's move on to like the betting, because this is another crucial part of, and again, this advice we're telling you is stuff that me and Jeff have learned because we got into this hobby.
But most people don't know this.
And a lot of people think it may not matter, or like, it doesn't matter to me because I just bet for fun. But the fun is making your money last longer, and it's not fun to lose everything immediately, because I've seen so many people, they want to get into this and they make horrible bets, and they lose all their money, and then they're like, well, this is horrible. It's not fun at all. Like, it's all about maximizing your fun, but doing it the most educated way possible.
Tom. Like, seriously, like if he's saying maximize fun, he means it.
Losing all your money isn't fun. So let's go to bet size. Okay, so it all is in proportion to the amount of bankroll you have. So let's just, and I think it's a good practice for everybody to, and this is also a healthy way to gamble, because everybody always wants to look at the guy that lost their house or like lost money they should have lost.
That's unhealthy. I can I don't know. Yeah, that sounds real bad.
And so you should set aside an amount of money that you want to use for this hobby.
How do you determine that?
Everybody's different. And so some people could set aside $1,000. Some people have $100, right?
Right.
And this may be not fun to hear, but your unit size, your bet size per bet should be around 2% of your entire bankroll if you want to last. Now, we can go into making it a little more fun for yourself if you're completely recreational.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah, it is, because at $100, you're talking $2 a bet.
Right.
And then $2 may not even move the needle. Even for someone who's poor, they're like, well, this doesn't mean shit.
But if you were trying to figure it out, an argument could be made. Look, if you're experimenting,
if you are playing this for the hobby, because then
if you want to learn how to do it next time,
I'll tell you how to increase the value of that $2. And this is something no one talks about. And Jeff, I don't know if you find this to be true, but a lot of times, okay, $2 doesn't move the needle for you financially, but posting your bet publicly may add value and, I guess action, if you want to call it, to that bet. I've done this where I post a public bet, or like, I like this bet. And then, so I want to win more for just for the fact that I told everybody more than even the money that I have on that, which my unit size may be $40 or $20, right? And then there's like 2 units or 3 units depending on how much you believe in that bet. But what do you think about that, Jeff? And talk a little bit about unit size.
I don't care what people think. I'm here for the money. That's where I place it on my bets. I don't go with the whole 2% of your bankroll thing, because what it usually leads to is super small bets, because most of us aren't playing with big bankrolls. And I'll talk about unit size, but one thing to consider when we're talking about multiple outs, having money in as many booking accounts as you can, you got to keep in mind, if you have 9 books, that bankroll you have is getting divvied up. So the worst thing that could happen is you find a great number at one of those books, but then your account has like 25% of what your regular unit bet is. So I want to make sure that I have enough books, that I have the outs that Tom's talking about, but that I also have the money. So if something good comes along, I can play it. I don't really do a percentage of bankroll. I have to bet enough money that I care if I lose. Because what happens is, if I start betting $5, $10 a game, and again, nothing against you if that's your big bet, it's different for everybody. But with me, if I bet 10 a game, I'm just going to bet on everything. I'm going to be betting on TV games. I'm going to be getting on any game I have like a half an opinion on. If I make my minimal bet meaningful, then I really start to criticize my handicap on a game. I really start to only go with my best stuff. So it is a way to sort of regulate yourself, betting enough that you care if you lose, but not so much that you're gonna headball the drywall if you lose. You don't want to be running your fists through the refrigerator. Just an example.
Gotcha. And you're completely right, Jeff. It's completely different for everybody. But what I'm saying is basically a way to almost guarantee that you're not going to go bust super quickly.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I'm
like
saying?
a safeguard to extend it a bit so you can actually learn
Absolutely.
what you're doing.
And if you want to learn, this is the best way to learn. I mean, put $100 in and bet $2 a game. It'll take you're going to lose a lot,
right?
But you learn before that $100 is up, and then you're getting the education out of it.
Well, it's like trying to teach somebody how to actually play poker, but they're not playing tight at all, so they don't have enough hands to learn.
Yeah. And
you got to have enough hands to learn.
And I've seen this all the time, like on the BDM gambling page, and when talking about gambling for years, like people are like, "Oh, I like this game. I'm putting $1,000 on it." You're just like $1,000.
You gave me no reason why you did that.
You're betting way too much. Now, I understand if you have a random $1,000, you don't care about losing, and you want to enjoy.
Who has a random $1,000 they care about? They don't care about losing.
You want to enjoy the Super Bowl and make it. You want to ride, play the action, ride the lightning, as we call it. Then that's fine. But doing that, if that $1,000 matters to you at all, is the worst possible thing you could do. Betting a gigantic amount right off the bat on just your heart? I mean, I understand if you think you have a huge edge, which no way you do. Especially
not
we're talking
in this scenario.
NFL.
We're also talking about a layman, right, who just started doing this.
Yeah,
most of your guys that are doing this aren't going to do this. So we have our books. We have like 4 or 5 books. We have our bankroll now. We know how much of our bankroll we should bet small.
Here's what the bets you stay away from. Quit betting long parlays. I know if you get into the hobby, you'll learn that correlated parlays do matter and you can win.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Just stay away from parlays. The general advice is if you're starting or new, if you're not new, any of this information you're hearing right now, you've heard already. So it doesn't matter. But stay away from giant parlays. People want to do these parlays. Now, I will say that I do every once in a while. I'll make like a 5-team parlay. I'll call it a scratch-off ticket. Bet $5, and I look at it like a scratch-off ticket. That I have a better odds than a scratch-off of winning. So those are fine.
Then again, it's only you're saying $5.
Yeah,
I get it.
What do you think about that, Jeff?
You're dead on, because I wouldn't say don't bet parlays at all, because parlays are fun. If you're going to leave the house, like Daniel, say you're going to go to Hooters with Andrea and you're going to watch some games. You don't want to sit there on your phone live betting the whole time, be that engaged. But maybe you want to bet on your Falcons, and maybe you're going against the Bucks, and you want to put a little 3 or 4 game parlay together. So if you're sitting there eating your wingies and everything is tight at the end of the 1 o'clock slot, you've got a lot of fun having these multiple games, and you bet small to try to win big. That's fun. I'm all about that. Where Tom nails it is just make sure it's the proper percentage of your bankroll. So if you're putting $100 into play any given week, and $5 of that is for a parlay, that's around 5%. I mean, you're paying that in VIG to the bookies anyway. And the beauty is, if you hit one of those once every 4 or 5 weeks, it pays for itself. So as long as you are keeping the amount tame and you're just doing something to have some fun, go ahead and play your parlays to your heart's content.
Can I ask a stupid question to both of you? It sounds like both of you are talking about just a simple act of organizational self-control on betting.
Discipline. And another, speaking of mistakes, with people betting large money on parlays, or another thing is chasing. So people will lose and then try to bet it all on Monday night,
get it back,
or Sunday night, because you're trying to win it back. I've done this. I'm sure Jeff has. Everybody listening to this, if they're into gambling, have done this. And every single time you do it, you lose. You kick yourself. You're like, why did I do that? Discipline. I have to remind myself, discipline, you piece of shit, discipline, because that's why am I doing it? Everybody says not to do it, and then you do it and you lose, and now
because you're human, you feel it.
Yeah, and it's just like, stay away from that. That's that's going to get you away from this hobby. It's going to get you away from enjoying.
So
this.
Accept your loss and learn from it. Don't chase it. Accept the loss, sit in it, ruminate in it, marinate in it if you will, but don't chase it.
A good piece of advice for that I can give is, go into every weekend with a plan. I know this goes against no plan Van.
No. I think he does have a plan in gambling. I think he does have a plan in gambling.
You have to. Yeah, you have to. You have to be
organized.
Write
them out. You can write them on your phone. I'm an old pop. I got my yellow legal pad of paper. I will write down all of the games I'm looking at betting, and I'm going to write down what the number needs to be for me to pull the trigger. So guess what? If I have a lousy Sunday and then the Sunday night football game isn't on that pad of paper, it's easier for me to not try to convince myself, you know what, I do like this game for 5 times more than I've ever bet on anything. Honey, do we need to pay the mortgage this month? I have a good feeling about the Niners here.
Okay, serious question from the guy on the sidelines. Have you ever gone against the paper?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Because occasionally,
everybody votes emotionally. Everybody bets on narrative.
But just try to minimize that, and you'll do better.
Yeah, it's essentially learning that your brain is flawed, and your brain is going to try to push you towards something emotionally, whatever it is. Start convincing yourself, and you're just like, it's just math. It's just a math game. You got to take emotion out of it. You got to be disciplined. Now, real quick, let's talk about key numbers real quick. Because that's important as well. When you're making a bet, you have to look at the numbers. They're everything in the NFL. And key numbers, of course, 3, 7 are the most important, right? Then there's like 6, 10, 14, obviously all dependent on how the NFL is scoring.
Correct.
Right?
These are all scoring numbers.
Now, the deeper you dive into it, you start to learn the 3 doesn't matter as much as it used to, and things are changing a little bit. But for the most part, just remember all right, there's key numbers. Now, let's look at 3, right? The difference between 2.5 and 3 is gigantic. Yeah. The difference between 3 and 3.5, that hook, that half point is huge. And same thing with 7 and 7.5. So you got to realize, and that's when it comes back to shopping, like when you go to your first sports book, you're like, oh, Bovada has +3. Tom said that, I know +3 is great. Look at the rest of the books, at least your other 2 or your other 1.
Compare.
And then that other book may have a 3.5 because it hasn't moved. And you're like, that 3.5 is such a better number. It'll determine whether you win or lose long term.
Gotcha.
And so what do you think about numbers, Jeff?
You're dead on. And that's the one to talk about is 3. Because if you look at NFL data going back to 2006, this is like over 2,600 games. About 19% of games have fallen on exactly the number 3. And that's why it's considered such a key number, because of the frequency that it shows up as the actual final score. So he's right. If you're on the books early and you see that +3, you want to search for the +3.5. But you also might start to notice other books have dropped to 2.5. So that tells you, I don't love 3, but I better buy it if I want to get on this game. So it's really letting you know. And if you're really sharp and really on it, and this isn't me, by the way, but if you're one of these people that's shopping the lines early, constantly on it, you might find yourself in a situation where you get the +3.5 and you find a -2.5 on the other side. Now we're in a situation where if the game lands on 3, we're going to win both of our bets. So there's a lot of really shrewd gamblers who do nothing but shop for this kind of situation. But you got to know your stuff and have the outs and be on it. It's a level that's above me, but I am aware of how cool it is. If you can do it.
Yeah, and then we're all just learning this hobby now, and we'll get into if you're just purely recreational what you should do. But going back to teasers. There's another thing in teasers. You could pay more vig or a higher price to add 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5 to point spreads.
So you're buying the ability to take it down,
and it has to be parlayed with another team. So you take 2 teams and you could add 6 points to their line, which seems great. But it only matters unless you're doing an advantage or Wong teaser, and you're bringing, let's say, a +1.5 up to a 7.5 because you're going through 2 key numbers like we talked about, 3 and 7. Trust me, if you talk to any professional gambler, don't tease anything unless it's a Wong teaser, an advantage teaser. Don't tease through 0. Is mathematically not good. Don't start teasing arbitrary numbers like 15.
You're fighting finite numbers at that point.
Yeah. Only tease through 3 and 7. Stick to that. That's what See,
this is, as a non-math guy, the number one thing that makes sense for a non-math guy is that it always works. Does that make sense? So you guys should know that. Like, I get it.
Yeah, math is math.
Exactly.
It's
like,
the only real truth.
I get it, and trust me, I'm the guy that totally gets it because I'm not good at it.
I don't even know the math. I just trust that the people I'm listening to know the math.
Change.
Yeah, and when they say the math doesn't work out, I just believe it because I can't even do the math. So I just trust the professionals.
I just wanted everybody to know that it's not like it changes.
And from every professional sports bettor I've listened to, that's what they say. So I just trust the professionals.
Sure.
Right, Jeff?
Yeah, I've got Stanford Wong's book, and it might as well be written in Russian for all the mathematics and formulas. I just have it on my shelf to reference if I ever want to place a crazy bet and I need to know sort of the odds on it, but I don't understand 3 pages of that book.
So real quick, let's just go over real quick about how the NFL market is shaped and why it's super efficient, because the more money is bet on the NFL than any other sport in the United States. So that it's the most efficient market, which makes it the hardest market to beat. So this is the hardest thing you could possibly think of, is to try to win money betting on the NFL. So just know that off the bat. Like, it's the hardest sport to bet on because so many people do it. So there's a lot of people don't realize how the numbers even made. They just think Vegas comes up with it, and
I don't know how they're made.
Well, okay, we'll talk about this. So there are specific sports books that make the original number, right? And so it's like Circa, and there's some other ones. I don't. You can deep dive into who actually the market maker is.
Sounds dark and powerful.
But say they put out a +3 -110 as the starting number, right? And what they'll do is they put it out there, and then they let the market and the professionals shape the number. So they're not that smart. They just put out a number, and then they put low limits. So at the beginning, you can only bet a certain amount, low limits, and then they let the professionals, because that's who's betting on the number that first comes out.
Right.
Anybody who knows their shit, right? They're not no one's betting right before the game, and there's some advantages later on. But anyway, right when the number comes out, and then if a bunch of money comes on that +3 and not on the -3, they start moving the number, right? And then by Wednesday, the number, all the professionals have bet on a particular number, and then they'll open the limits up because now they've shaped the number using Hive intelligence, and all the pro bettors in the world betting on this number.
They got it a little bit better on their side. Is what they've done, right?
Yes, they've used the intelligence of everybody combined, which has proven to be the smartest opinion, right? Hive intelligence is closer to the reality than any one person, and then that's how the market. So when that original line comes out, it is to your advantage if you know that it's going to move a certain way to bet on a game early. And what do you think about that, Jeff? I know me and you kind of wait till injury reports and some other stuff. Because I don't have time because we do the show and stuff.
Right, well, you're trying to fit your hobby into what you have, and that's what I think most people are going to do.
So my hobby is basically turned to I'm betting right when that line comes out on Sunday. And by the way, they usually release a line on Sunday night, Monday. That's when books are going to start putting up their NFL lines for next week. So like all the week 1 lines are out now, and they've been out since 4 months ago or whatever. But the NFL opening day week, the next lines will come out Sunday night, Monday morning, and then it's advantageous for you just to look at the opening line, because there may be value. You're like, oh, I see a +3. I think that's going to go to a +2.5.
But that's where your knowledge would come in, and
and then it's worth a small. A lot of times I jump on there, and then I'll go through each, and then I'll bet $10 or $20 on things I think are going to move, just to practice to see if they do move.
Right.
I don't have to bet some large amount, because that's a practice to me of like, can I get closing line value, which we'll talk about, which means that you got a better number early, than it ends. And so there, if you have a +3.5 and it ends, a +2, and then it's like you got such a better number than the game day. So what do you think about all that, Jeff?
Yeah, what you're doing, Tom, by putting just a little bit of money on it, it's just called dollar cost averaging. So let's say your normal bet's $100. I'm just making that up hypothetically. Yep. You put $10 Sunday night down, knowing that if this number gets better, you're going to put more money down. If it doesn't, if it goes against you, works the actual opposite direction, okay, you're done. You're out. You just got $10 down. But see, the reason I don't play the early numbers is because personally, my system, I like to look more at what I think the narratives in the game are going to be. And this takes me a little bit of time. I'm just not ready to pull the trigger on Sunday night. So I'll use the look ahead lines all the lines for week 2 are out before they kick off week 1. So what you can do, even if you don't get around to the lines till like Wednesday or Thursday, just look at what the previous week's look-ahead line was. Any movement from that number to the current number is really just based on speculation from the one game that was played the week before. So you can get a really good idea, and this helps more later in the year. If a number is +2 on a team, and then they go out and look horrible on Sunday night, and then Monday morning, all of a sudden they're +4, you know that there's some overreaction from the public there, and that's why that line moves so much. But if you are also like Tom, you're watching that game and you're like, oh, the Giants are looking horrible. I want to get their opponent right now at the -2 next week because I know this line's going to move and it's going to be more expensive to play the favorite against the Giants. That's another place where you can really take advantage. But just so long as it's comfortable with your system, you never want to start firing bets until you're done with all your research. Now, the best bettors are betting early. So if you want to follow in line with the sharpest people, Tom's definitely on the right track here. I just do it a little different, and I take solace in the fact that the only advantage, and there's only one, that the bettors have over the bookies is we don't have to bet every game. We can walk away. So again, this goes back to that discipline. If you think, oh, gee, this might be when I want to play this, but I'm not ready. If you're willing to walk away, if that line changes and you miss the best of it, you're going to be okay. But if you are someone who needs to get in there early, the earlier is going to get you your best value.
Interesting.
All right, we'll go over a couple more things, and then we're going to be done, and we could talk about this.
This is fun, though. I love the way you explain things, man. I feel like you need to be my doctor or something.
You can listen to.
I'm having a great time.
You got a good bedside manner. He's very
like.
Can this guy come in and tell me I don't have cancer?
Yeah,
I need him to come in and tell me I don't have cancer.
Well, that's what Jeff
and you're fine.
And again, Jeff has his podcast, Sharp Square.
I followed it.
If you go on the BDM gambling page, it's on there. And he's got a good voice, right?
He does.
I want to
it's
listen to
calming.
Jeff. And I can tell he knows what he's talking about. A lot of times you see people all over the internet.
He pauses before he talks, which I appreciate.
And they're handicapping, like it's the game. This is the lock of the week. All this bullshit, and then it's
don't make it corny. Don't make it corny. I like this better.
And that's fun. And let's real quick, and then I'll tell you some of the people I listen to.
He said the word fun like 5 times on the show today.
I think are this is my dad hobby.
I love it.
And I get it. And I'm obsessed with how hard it is.
Yeah.
And that's a huge allure to me.
Yeah,
the
you
fact
love that kind
it's
of stuff.
I mean, 1% of people in the world can win at this in the NFL level. A lot of people can win. Like you start betting on WNBA and stuff, like you could win. In college,
I feel like at that you're almost
this
just
is
like
hard.
cheating or something.
Yeah, there's a loose definition of the term professional gambler. There's like 6 people on the planet who can do this and make really good money. Everyone else who's a professional, they're just a gambling addict without gainful employment.
Yeah. By the way, I just finished the Billy Walters book, and when he finally, by the way, it's a whole biography. It's not just about sports betting.
Yeah.
But the 2 chapters that are about sports betting, he talks about exactly what we're talking about. I mean, there's no difference. Like when I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, everybody knows. There's no secret anymore.
Yeah.
It's just that Billy Walters had 500 people working with him, and he had more money.
Well, the difference is access, right?
Yeah,
access.
Yeah, and he had computer models and geniuses working for him. And then when you have all those resources, of course he won.
Well,
but he's doing the same shit.
I don't want you guys to run out of time. And I think we should do this again, maybe like mid-season or maybe even before that. But what are some things that you guys want to hit before we run out of time?
Okay, real quick, I wanted to mention this because some people may have listened to all this. It sounds like gibberish to them. They're like, I just want to bet and have fun watching NFL games. I don't know how to to do it, right? And I'll tell you,
I'm like that, but I want to do better than that.
Okay, Daniel, if this is what you do.
Plus.
Sign up for Bovada and bet online, right?
I got that.
And you have a Bitcoin account and transfer money, right? So transfer $200 into each account, right? Now, those, and we'll talk about this for a second, Jeff, those offshore sports books, they have contests that are fun to play. Survivor, have you ever heard of Survivor? So Survivor is basically you pick an NFL team each week that's going to win. If they win, you advance. If they lose, you're out. Yeah. And there's like $100,000 to the winner at the end, and then and that's a fun picking the team that's going to. Now once you pick that team's out for the next week. So there's strategy involved or whatever, and they cost $10, some $15 to get in.
Just a little something to kill the time.
Yeah, and that's a cheap way to enjoy it. I know Jeff likes Super Contest. Super Contest is basically you get to pick, out of every single game, and you get to pick the spread, right? A lot of times it benefits you to pick early because the spread does change, and you can get closing line value. We
learned about that.
But anyway, and you play that Super Contest. It's a $20 buy-in and a huge. It's like playing a tournament, and then that's a cheap way to engage yourself into the NFL. And then, and then if you want to bet individual games, and let's say you don't want to do any research, wait until game day. That's when the line is going to be most efficient.
Yeah, it's right there.
And then pick the team you want to win. Like, say you're a Bills fan, then wait until game day and pick the Bills. And then bet small so you don't lose all your money. Yeah. And then have your Super Contest. And now you're gambling and enjoying, like, you're enhancing your entertainment level. And you're not, like, wasting all your money, and you don't feel bad about it at the end of the day. So you lose 10, 20
that
bucks.
That kind of goes back to, like, the first 20 minutes. I feel like that's going to be the hardest part for anybody listening to this. And tell me what you guys think about this. I think the hardest part, because everything you guys are talking about seems like something that if I wanted to, I just go online and I can research it and read it just like you did, just like Jeff did.
This information is free.
But the one thing you're talking about, like when you talked about discipline and you talked about adhering to the yellow legal pad, the writing it down, and hey, when I'm done, I'm done. There's nothing else that you can. I don't think there's anything else you can give people to have them adhere to that, right? That's inside of you.
Yes, yeah.
Like the idea of walking away from it and making it like either something that you're going to grind on and get better at or ruin your day is really just discipline.
Yeah, that's up to you.
But that's the beauty. See, that can be the beauty of a parlay or playing in a Super Contest. Go ahead first thing in the day before you place your first bet on Sunday and put a little $2 parlay on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, the games, maybe the totals, the over-under, whatever it is. And then when you start itching, late in the day, you're like, oh, I already have a bet. I don't need to place another one. So if you have money in these contests, like Tom said, it's $20 to enter. If you have a couple small $2, $5 parlays, it can sometimes satisfy that itch. And then you're only betting your best stuff because you've taken care of the vice, just in a little cheaper fashion.
You're just hitting it head on, man.
The amateur has to do this. And this is for me too. Part of the professionals is they have the discipline to say no, but I want action, baby. I got to have it. So you just got to figure out how to keep yourself engaged without blowing the bankroll on stuff that you shouldn't be invested. And there's lots of ways to do this. My Bookie is one of the sites that has some of the more fun kind of things to play at low dollar cost. So that's a good way for people to sort of help contain themselves.
Just think value. How can I get the most value out of this and without losing all my money? And that's really the name of the game. And let's end with just some people that we listen to, some podcasts we listen to, some books we've listened to. I'll start off. Of course, we've talked to with the Even Money podcast and Ross Tucker.
He's awesome.
He does a podcast, a small one each week with Steve Fezzik, who's another guy.
Super easy listen. I listen to it.
It's
quick.
easy. Now, you're not going to really dive too deep, and how sharp the information is depends on how much you want to get into this, but it's something for you to start understanding how to think about gambling. But that's a 20-minute every Tuesday show. Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik. Steve Fezzik is another guy that knows what he's talking about. He does sell picks, which does piss off other people in the hardcore gambling industry,
I like that.
because they don't like touts. Because there's been so much scams of people like, I'll sell you my picks for $250 a month, and it's like these are guaranteed winners, but they're selling kind of garbage.
Right.
But anyway, he knows what he's talking about, and the information he puts out there is good. Rob Pizzola is another guy you should look into. He'll tell you how it's done. He just in the Circles Off podcast, he just brought this guy G Stack George, who is a guy that's new, but he knows.
I like his name.
He knows what he's talking about.
Like old G Stack. Is that G like G the drug?
Yeah, it just means for like $1,000 G Stack.
No, I know. I was G.
A deep dive podcast is good. Drew Denzig is a good guy that knows what he's talking about. Then if you just want handicapping or NFL knowledge, 3 and Out podcast is good. John Middlecoff, he just talks about the NFL news. And then there's like Dream Preview, which they handicap whether or not the information is great, but it is a smart conversation about football each week. You could take their picks for what they are. Again, if you like consuming information, because that's another name of the game. You want to start getting into predicting.
Expose yourself to it, yeah.
You got to, now you don't even have to know about NFL though, because if you are just playing the numbers, it's just a numbers game. You don't even need to know the teams. But if you want to get more into it, handicapping and predicting what you think is going to happen is part of the fun of all this, and I enjoy doing it. Although, if you think you're really good at it, you're not. Believe me. You are an amateur, and there are a lot of people that have a lot more time invested in than you do. Unless you are spending 80 hours a week researching
it would
this,
be impossible.
Then I don't believe you're good at it. What do you think about that, Jeff?
I'm good at it.
Now you're better than most, Jeff. I will give it to you, but you even have to admit it's the hardest to handicap something, because you need to put so much time. And I listened to Billy Walters. You need a team behind you to be really good.
You need to get everything, and you're not getting everything.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that, right?
Information, yeah.
It's like if you're not getting everything, you're not being the best.
Now, if you are grinding it, you could be better than most.
Sure.
And let's talk about that, Jeff. How do you go about handicapping?
The one more thing, and I'll answer your question. Remember this about all these systems too, and these models, and using all the analytics, and breaking out your abacus and your slide rule. The books pay all these people to do this work for them too. So as soon as you think you have all the answers, like the great Rowdy Roddy Piper says, I changed the question. You can study all you want. The best people in the world at doing this research are working for the bookmakers. So I always just try to remain humble enough to know that I'm probably never going to beat the book when it comes to getting the best of the number. I think the most important thing is you have to have a system that makes sense to you. For me, I use a little bit of the eyeball test. I might look at a couple stats here and there, but I watch a lot of football. And I like to watch the quarterbacks. I mean, even if you're just having fun doing it, the quarterback's getting the ball 50, 60 times a game. And the quarterback you're betting again is getting the ball 50, 60 times a game. You watch enough of this, you start to build a little bit of a data point. And in your brain, that eyeball test, people just kind of dismiss it because everything has to be numbers. Well, I can use stats to say whatever I want. It just depends which stats I pay attention to and which ones I omit. And that's subjective too. So I'm really just trying to evaluate. I'm trying to evaluate players, mainly quarterbacks. I want to take a look at coaches, because they have so much say. A coach that knows what he's doing, managing a game. And this is another thing. You watch enough football, you'll figure out who knows what they're doing and who has no idea. And lastly, I like to look at offensive lines, mainly just because most people don't. So if there's little hidden edges to be had in games, it's not going to be evaluating all the wide receivers and the running backs. Everyone knows everything about those matchups from the love of fantasy football. But offensive line, nobody's paying attention to those dudes. And football comes down to one basic concept. If as a defense, without blitzing, you can get pressure on the opposing quarterback and make him uncomfortable, that's a big advantage. And conversely, if you on the offense can make your guy comfortable and give him time to throw, that's the big advantage. So many of these sharp guys will tell you the game is played in the trenches. If you can pay attention to that and pick up a little info on that, you're going to have maybe a little edge that other people don't. Even if you can't quantify it, you can just watch within first 2 or 3 plays of a game. You can see if a line has an advantage over the other.
I know what I'm hearing. The edge is in the fatties.
Watching football and trust in yourself, and then running a system,
the big guys,
and letting it play out to make sure that your system is being given a fair shot.
You got to figure out all the little details about these big tubs on the O-line.
Jeff, is there any other podcasts that you want to mention that you consume?
Well, I mean, I do want to mention the Sharp Square podcast, and that you can get on Spotify, on Google or Apple Podcasts,
one of the best Stitcher, you can listen to.
And, you know, the biggest thing I'll say about that, I know you didn't tell me to promote myself, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That's fine.
I'm just honest about how hard this is.
Yeah.
And I hate how every podcast I listen to, it sounds like the guys win 60-70% of their games. They never talk about losing. They never talk about how hard it is. And I think it's helpful to people to know that you can struggle through this and still get better and still have fun. That being said, you mentioned RJ Bell's Dream Preview. I think that's the gospel of it. I think those guys do the best work. If you listen to them talk shop, you're going to learn how to formulate opinions for yourself even better. So that's my go-to one. But you listen to way more podcasts than I do. I thought I was heavy loaded.
He's got a bigger yard, man. He's got yard work to do.
I have scheduled, I try to fit it in. I literally started working out just so I could have the excuse of listening. I work out now, try to 30 minutes a day just to listen to consume as much. Simple Handicap is another one. Adam Chernoff is great at handicapping, and that's a 15-minute a day daily thing you can pop on.
I'm kind of into those, the ones that you can get into the routine of it, because I feel like that's going to help you too.
And he follows the market, which is an important thing to do. At the end of the day, this is all just you're playing a market. It's a sports market. It's the NFL, but it's no different than you're playing a stock market.
Yeah, it's like stocks with cigars and I don't know where I'm going.
The only difference between this market and the stock market is football, I don't think, is fixed.
Yeah, right.
And also, it's a fun payoff on Sunday to watch a game and the action if you have money on it. The last thing I'll mention is a really good book, The Logic of Sports Betting. There's an audio book for those of you who don't like to read like me.
Well, it speeds things up.
Buy that. It goes through everything and in depth of what we talk about and more, and it just gives you the basics of all this. But I think at the end of the day, if you just take the basics of I want to start doing this, I don't know how to get into it, get Bitcoin, get a Bitcoin wallet, transfer into these offshore sports books, and just start betting small and start really understand what you're doing.
What do you guys think of this? Because I haven't what do you guys think about this coming from the guy that knows absolutely the least of the two of you? Don't be afraid to ask questions is what I would say, because so many of the guys that I know that fail in any hobby are just afraid to banter because they're afraid of being made fun of, or it's intimidating, or you look stupid. I have found most of the guys that you talk to are like
they want to talk about this.
Yeah, it's just like Jeff. It's like they're just good humans that want. It's a hobby for them, and they won't shut up once they get going. Yeah. So don't be afraid to do it, because that's really taking advice, and that's how you get better.
Yeah, people
taking advice.
Yeah, they think they look stupid, or it becomes like I want to, betting huge amounts and
stupid is continuing to do it with zero knowledge and not asking any questions.
Even Mattress Mac, who's betting $4,000 or $4 million on the Super Bowl, he's just hedging a promotional bet. He's not even riding a $4 million bet. Maybe there's probably a little bit of
something in there.
Side that he wants to win, really, but he's just hedging it. So it's like everybody's like, oh, look at this guy. He's
it's not happening the way you think it's happening. Ask some questions.
He is playing both sides of it at the So there's, if you really deep dive into this, you realize that the best and smartest people are playing this like a market, and that's how you should even begin to look at it if you want to ever become good at it, or have, like I said, you're never going to win. I'm just throwing it out there long term, but you can lose a small amount. I've been playing with the same $2,000, really, or give or take, since 2020.
It's been a minute, yeah.
So I had a lot of fun NFL seasons where this was my hobby, and honestly, it dwindled a little bit, but a couple $100 a season, maybe I lose some, but it's like, and then for a hobby that gives me this much joy, for a couple $100 a season, but that's only because I try to be as disciplined as possible and take the advice of professionals. And I think even if you don't want to do any of the research, just stick to the very basics of the advice we gave, and I think you could have a more enjoyable gambling relationship with the NFL. Point. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, just don't be afraid to be wrong. I mean, the best people who do this, when they have an opinion, they don't care if they are on an island. If you have a conviction, put your money where your mouth is. And nothing is more rewarding when you're on an island and you make a tough bet where you're afraid to feel dumb. Those are the hardest bets to make, but they're the most rewarding when they hit. And if you bet enough and you're betting bad, it's like playing cards. You play enough hands terrible, you're going to start to learn what to do, what not to do, and just trust that if you're paying attention and really trying to put your best stuff in there, you're going to get better as you go along and place more bets. So just go for it, and you'll learn along the way.
Oh, Jeff, thanks so much for doing this show with us. And again, I just wanted to get this information out and
I think it's
talk
awesome.
about it. I've set myself up. I set my laptop up with all my books. I paid for power ratings this year. I'm really gonna set my alarm on Monday morning, get up early, start looking at all the numbers. Like, I'm putting the time into my hobby, and there's ways.
This is gonna be your year,
and not necessarily.
It could be.
This is what, again, I have fun doing.
Yeah, I love it.
And if
he said it, folks. He said it.
If I could win, it's like a puzzle to me. It's just a game.
It's so funny how naturally Jeff and I smile when you said that, because we're like, how is he even saying this?
Anyway,
it's the only hobby you could ever have that could actually make money. Every hobby is a liability, right? Financially. If you like to go to movies, it's not like if you pick a good movie, the usher's like, hey, here's your money back and double up. Great job.
Yeah, right.
Every hobby you're spending money on. So if you look at it this way and you budget yourself that if I lose it all, oh, well, it was my hobby. But who knows? You might have a hot run and then make a little money out of it. And then now you got the fever.
Yeah, no, 100%. And another book I want to throw out there real quick, because speaking of that, I believe it helped me think differently about every aspect of my life. There's a book called Thinking in Bets by Andy Duke. A former professional poker player, and it's really good, and it kind of gets you to think about everything in bets and in the terms of value. And honestly, everything's about value. Every life decision you make is about value. All these bets is like, do you have good value? And if you start really looking into value, I can't see any reason why that's a wrong way to look at life. And
no,
every
and
decision
it's just a different approach. It may not work for everything you go to do, but it isn't unique. And you really like that book. You breeze through that one.
But it should, again, that's audio book. But
it doesn't matter.
You should look at every decision you make as, is this the best value for me or the most valuable decision? And anyway, well, Jeff, I appreciate it. Maybe we'll do this again.
Yeah, man, it was fun.
Later on in the season. And,
good luck this year.
And I'll be listening to your podcast, and we'll be talking.
All right. You guys have a great day. I appreciate it.
You too. Take care, Jeff.